Today we're going to be talking about solving one-step equations. This is the introduction to true like algebra. Solving equations, finding what x equals, finding what our variable equals. So following along, we're starting chapter 2, section 1. Now to start with, there's, for the most part, two things we're going to be doing in order to solve an equation to start with. The first one is to add opposites. Now to define this, opposites mean the same number and variable or the same term, but just make it the opposite sign. If it's positive, make it negative. If it's negative, make it positive. And we're adding opposites to both sides of the equal sign. Just like a balance. If I add 4 pounds to this side, I have to add 4 pounds to this side to keep it balanced. We are balancing these equations, so we don't want to change what they totally are. Now, you have to think about it. What happens when you add opposites? So if we pick opposites, any opposite you can think of. Opposite of 7 is negative 7. What's 7 plus negative 7? 0. What's the opposite of negative 14 thirds? Positive 14 thirds. We add them up, we get 0. If we were to think about pi, very useful number that you'll eventually become very familiar with. The opposite of pi is negative pi. That also equals 0. What if we had this term, negative 4xyz? The opposite of that is positive 4xyz, and again that equals 0. So to remember, when we add opposites to both sides, that opposite, whatever we add, is going to result in getting a value of 0. You're going to find that the number 0 and the number 1 are very important in math. Trying to get to those numbers. The second thing we can do is multiplying by the reciprocal. Or, this is also called division. I actually prefer multiplying by the reciprocal because it translates a lot better, makes things a lot neater, but I know that big word kind of messes us up. So, at the top of your page, on the top of your notes, some of you might not remember what a reciprocal is. Reciprocal is flipping a fraction. And hopefully you remember the word reciprocal going back to dividing fractions. We had 2/3 divided by 4/9. We couldn't divide them, we had to multiply by that reciprocal of 4/9 to make it 9/4. So a reciprocal to 3/5 is 5/3. Guess what that equals? 3's cancel, 5's cancel, it equals 1. The reciprocal of 4/9 is, flip the numbers again, 9/4, 4's cancel, 9's cancel, it equals 1. The reciprocal of negative 15/14. The sign stays the same in negative, and we flip the 14 and the 15. 14's canceled, negative 15's canceled, and we get we get the answer of 1. So when we divide by a reciprocal, or we divide by that same coefficient, we are getting an answer of 1. So we're solving equations. We're looking to get one of two things. Something equals 0, or something to equal 1. So you want to remember that. These two ways to solve equations are key, and you'll be using them for a very long time. Now, when we're given an equation, we need to think about what our goal is. And you want to fill this in. Our goal, whenever we're solving an equation, is to get the variable by itself. Now itself, think about that. If you're by yourself, or if something is by itself, how many are there of them? 1. We're trying to get that to a 1x, which also equals just x. Or if we're using another variable, like 1n or n, or m, or p, or t. Whatever the variable is, our goal is to get the x or the n or the variable all by itself. And again, to do that, we're either going to add opposites. And again, adding opposites is the same thing as subtraction. But in algebra, I hate to talk about subtraction. I think it confuses us and makes us make mistakes. I will always express this as add opposites. Number 2, multiply by the reciprocal, again, or we divide. And we're going to look to do this when we solve these problems. So again, our goal is to get our variable by itself. Now I'm going to skip through. There's 14 problems on your notes. We're going to kind of skip around to some of these. All right? So number 1 from your notes. We have x plus 7 equals 15. Now, many of you can do this problem in your head. You know what the answer is. You know what? Whoop-de-doo. I don't care that you know what the answer is. I want you to know how to solve it by either adding opposites or multiplying by the reciprocal or dividing. So we look at this and we have to think. X plus 7 equals 15. Well, let's highlight this x. We want to get this by itself. And there's my equation. I'm going to draw a line down the middle of the equal sign. What is this 7 doing to the x? It's adding to it. So, in order to, we want to do the opposite of it adding, which is adding opposites. So if something's being added or subtracted to the x, we want to add the opposite. And again, we need to do it to both sides. Again, if I take 7 away from a balance here, I need to take 7 away from the balance here. Guess what? 7 plus negative 7 is 0. This part gets canceled off, and we are left with just x. 15 minus 7 is 8. And there's our answer. One step to solve. Now I'm going to skip ahead to number 4. Number 4 was 16 equals g minus 10. Again, I'm going to start by making a line down the middle, right by the equal sign. Here's my variable, g. So I want to keep g all by itself. I only want to look at the side where the variable is. What do we have here? Minus 10. What's the opposite of minus 10? Add opposites again. I'm going to add 10 here. And I'm going to add 10 here. Negative 10 plus positive 10 again is 0. And we're left with our 1g. And we know 16 plus 10 is 26. There's our one-step solution. So, if we're adding or subtracting to our variable, we're looking to add opposites. Now, we're going to skip ahead to number 5. We have 5y equals 30. Now, I don't see any addition or subtraction going on here like I did in the first two. But what is going on with my variable? here's my variable y. I need to get this by itself. But I can't subtract that. Right? So don't do this, but look, if I go 5y minus 5, can I combine those terms? No, they are not like terms. We cannot do that. We will still be left with 5y minus 5 on this side. We're making this more complex and making it simpler. So I want to ask you, what is the 5 doing to the y? What operation? It's got to be one of them. Is it 5 plus y, 5 minus y, 5 times y, or 5 divided by y? Looks like it's 5 times y. So here, we either want to multiply by the reciprocal or divide. What is the inverse of multiplication? It is division. So we want to divide every term by 5. 2 terms there, divide both of them by 5. These 5s cancel out. And again, remember, multiplying by the reciprocal or dividing by the same number. We get our 1y. And we know 30 divided by 5 is 6. We're going to skip ahead to number 8. Negative 8x equals 4. Now, again, read this and plan. We have negative 8. Remember, this is times x. So, adding opposites doesn't help. What we need to do is divide by this to get x down to 1x. So we divide by negative 8. Negative 8 and negative 8 cancel, so we are left with just x there. Now, be careful when you're dividing. Please don't think about division all the time. Think about reducing your fraction. Because your answer is not negative 2. You want to think, how can we divide, or how can we reduce 4 over negative 8? Well, what numbers go into both 4 and 8? Well, 4 goes into 4, and 4 goes into 8. To reduce that, 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And it stays negative. So this answer is negative 1/2. Again, look to reduce. Do not make this common mistake. I will put a problem like this on your tests. This is one I need to try to trick you on to make sure you understand how to reduce your fraction. We're going to stop there. We'll pick up on the next problems in the next session.